So, Jody, you were on the Emmy ballot this year for your work on both The Crown and Relic. Let's start off talking about The Crown, in which you play Jackie Kennedy. I'm curious, going on to The Crown must be nerve-wracking enough, but playing Jackie Kennedy on top of that, what were your expectations like?
Yeah, it was sort of a twofold challenge for me in that I was such a huge fan of the show going into it that I almost had to get over my own fandom to put myself back in my professional mindset, I guess is the best way to put it. So I was incredibly nervous just about being part of something that I think is just so incredible. And then to enter into that playing someone who comes with kind of a lot of baggage, both in the way she's been portrayed before in other depictions of her in narrative stuff, and also just what everybody in the world seems to know about her. I felt a huge responsibility, but one that was incredibly exciting. And because I had such a wonderful support system from the Crown in dialect coaches and a research department and all those things, that I felt really as equipped as one could hope to feel when taking on something like this.
And working with a script by Peter Morgan.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about reading the script for the first time and what you thought.
I remember doing it on the plane to go and meet Stephen Daldry, because when I initially auditioned, I believe they just sent me the scenes, what with privacy and security and all of that stuff. And so when I was on my way to meet Stephen, they sent me the full episode, and I was flying to New York right before Christmas. It was already like so surreal. I had just found out I was going to meet him a few hours before, reading this episode, which is called Dear Mrs. Kennedy. That is such a beautiful love letter to the two women and sort of the potential of friendship. And it was, I think I was crying I was crying on the airplane, just so moved. I really think it's a beautiful, beautiful episode of television, but I'm a huge Peter Morgan fan, so.
Yes. Jackie Kennedy, she's a woman who there's been countless books and there's been movies made about her, lots of television appearances and footage. So what kind of research did you do in order to get yourself into the part? I mean, where did you look?
So as I mentioned, the research department on the Crown was incredibly helpful, and specific because of course there was like the broad research to do about her as a person and all of that beautiful homework that I think most actors do regardless. But then there's also the very specific research to be done about what happens in the episode. And on that stuff, I was really led by the research department because they had been doing all that research to come up with the episode. I sort of started, there was just sort of an open phase of accumulating all information I could. And of course, watching documentaries, having a look at the original Grey Gardens, reading as much about her as I possibly could. I didn't do much watching of other depictions of her because I can sort of run into trouble sometimes. I want to sort of keep it as about the real Jackie Kennedy as possible. And then lots and lots of work with the dialect coach on getting really, really specific about accent. But the thing that we all found the most interesting, and perhaps this isn't surprising to other people, particularly Americans, is that how little research there really was, or how little information there was about her private life. So that was challenging because we sort of just had to step into the world of imagination based on as much fact as possible when it comes to her and JFK behind closed doors, and Jackie behind closed doors, because they just were such private people, and they've gone to lengths to protect that information. So,
well, that goes back to the script. What did you, about her personality and her private life, what did you gain and take from the script that you used for your performance?
Well, sort of her character. I think Peter did such an amazing job at infusing both what we know of Jackie as this intrinsically graceful, diplomatic, kind, gentle woman when we see her depicted in interviews. And you see that laced throughout the episode, I think. Of course, then you also see the debauchery and the unraveling that was going on alongside it. What I think was so fun for me as an actor and was so potentially interesting perhaps as an audience is to see, you both got to see like the underbelly and the facade and the performance, you know. And not to say that she was performing and being fake, but that that's what the script gave me. Basically, that there was this woman leading an incredibly challenging life because she had to present one version of herself to the world while she was really suffering in her private life.
Well, I mean, I think you're right. It is a performance, not necessarily fake, but you are a public figure,
Right.
and the most well-known woman on the planet. So obviously, you've got to present something of yourself that is diplomatic and even a bit regal, like the
Mhm.
Queen.
Totally.
So talk a bit about the relationship between her and the Queen, and the relationship that you had with Claire Foy as actors, and what that was like playing off of each other.
Yeah. The relationship with the Queen, I always like to think, and I think perhaps the seed was planted by Stephen, and I've sort of really held on to it dearly. But I really love to think about them as potential true friends. You know, that in an alternative universe where they didn't have the public responsibilities they did, I think they would have become really dear friends. They both have this beautiful love of nature and animals, and they're both kind of true introverts more than extroverts, despite what their jobs might make them seem. Um, and so, yeah, that's what we tried to find those little moments of true connection, and then place the obstacle of their roles as public figures in their way constantly, you know. Um, and as far as Claire goes, I mean, she's just the best. I mean, I had such a giant actor crush on her coming into it. As I say, I was such a fan. And then I left feeling like I think she's maybe one of the coolest, nicest people on the planet. And yeah, just such a joy to work with. She's the most generous, present um, actress out there, I think. Honestly, I mean, I haven't worked with them all, but I just think she gives so much on screen, and that's why we all love to watch her so much. And that was certainly true in my experience. She's just there for you every step of the way, you know, regardless of who the camera is facing or anything like that. And while the camera isn't rolling, she's just hysterical. I mean, constantly making fun of herself, and we're all constantly sort of like laughing at the elaborate insanity of what the production is, and just lots and lots of fun.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, it is an elaborate production, very well put together. And I guess I got to ask you this, because Jackie Kennedy is someone who is well known for her style,
Mm-hmm.
and costumes on this show are always top notch.
Yeah.
So being in those costumes, how did that help you with your performance? And being in that surrounding, how did that help you with your
I
performance?
mean, tremendously. It's kind of why I love working in period stuff so much, because there's an element of truly feeling transported. You know, it really brings to life the saying, putting on someone else's shoes, when that costume and the world is so different from contemporary life, and certainly my contemporary life, that you are wearing these beautiful gowns in our case, and you have literally on these beautiful period shoes, and you're in this space that is so accurate and grand. It does so much of the work for you, you know. It really it's such an incredible way to do what we do.
You mentioned Stephen Daldry, and I just wonder if you could talk a bit more about what he gave you as a director
Yeah.
that really helped you.
I mean, he's just amazing. Well, from our very first meeting, he was just so, I mean, he's so educated about this all, of course, and you would expect that, but there's sort of like, what I think of when I think of Stephen is just such a profound understanding of the human spirit. And despite them telling this story rooted so deeply in history, and for a large amount fact, his interest really seems to lie in like unpacking all of what we do know to find out what we don't know. And so he was constantly sort of encouraging me to tap into like what the truth of her feelings were, and try and be um, as nuanced and as exploratory as possible about who this person really is. And truly, gave us, and I guess this is a Crown manifesto, but gave me full permission to let go of the responsibility of portraying a real life person, and just said, like, there comes a point where you've done your work and now it's time to like leap into our own imagination of all of this. Like, we're not in the business of impersonations. This is truly about telling a story through our own minds and hearts. And just giving me full permission to play, because there were certainly times when you're affecting the physical portrayal of Jackie. There's the vocal portrayal. There's all the lines, obviously, and the context of the scene, that I certainly in moments sort of felt a bit like I was acting in a glass box, because there were all these parameters that I had to make sure I was keeping inside of. And Stephen's allowance of me just to shatter that glass box and to truly explore and play the way you would in any other circumstance as an actor was like the best gift he could have given me.
One more on-screen relationship that I should ask you about, the one with you and your husband, President Kennedy himself, played by Michael C. Hall. Again, famous couple. Can you talk a bit about the relationship that the two of them have, and about working with Michael and how you guys achieved that kind of, the chemistry that we saw between them, but also, what we see behind closed doors?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, of course, I mean, a lot of people have been interested in the way we told their particular story and the creative license that we may or may not have taken, who knows. But yeah, that certainly fascinated me. This understanding and this willingness to explore that perhaps their marriage was as broken and as tricky as some people say it was, and some people suspect it was. And so that was really fun. Some of the most fun stuff I took away with me memory-wise was Michael and I flew with the crew to Budapest for a tiny amount of time to shoot all the Paris things, the things that took place in Paris, the flashback moments in the episode. One of which is this sort of very rough and tumble argument you see us having, where it ends in him like gripping me at a certain point. And it's amazing what ends up being in the cut with these things, but we shot like a 7 to 10 minute, mostly with a lot of improvisation scene in this hotel room of just, where it gets dark with them, how dark did it get? And really pushing those boundaries. And it was so fun. We joked on set with Stephen that like it was sort of a Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf moment, truly. And that, it was just such fun. We were all like imagining a spin-off about just Jackie and JFK for a second in that moment. And the moment where we were implying that there was drug use on both of their parts, and all of those things were truly fun. Truly fun to do, which sounds ridiculous to say. The scene in the White House where there's that tension between them and you see him flirting, and then he sort of so callously delivers the news to her that she's upset queen. They just wrote such beautiful moments for us. So we really got to like go on a little journey with their marriage, which is such fun. And Michael is just like the most gentlemanly gentleman out there. His work ethic and his commitment was truly remarkable. And he's just such a lovely, lovely man. The whole environment, the whole like team of us on this episode is just such a treat.
Well, let's switch gears a bit drastically and talk about Relic. What initially attracted you to this series and to the part of Elaine Shepherd?
For me, it was really getting to play someone who's, what's a good way to put this? Just to play the kind of character that I don't usually get to play, and the fun that went with going. I literally went from playing Jackie to playing Elaine. So, donning these gorgeous 1960s ball gowns to running around East London in a black leather jacket with a gun. The contrast was really exciting to me. And getting to play someone who was, you could use some interesting terms to describe her, and definitely someone who was battling with a bit of like mental health stuff, and truly go to some dark places. I guess you could say I'm not as spoiler alert for anyone that hasn't watched it, but to truly get to play a villain, I haven't really got to do that all that much. So that was the draw for me.
You seem so nice in real life. It was very surprising too.
That's how I let all the dark stuff out. Just go and do it at work, you know?
Well, tell us a bit about Elaine and about the relationship she has with the lead character played by Richard Dormer.
So we meet her, and she's a detective in the police force alongside Richard's character, Gabriel. And they, at first, you sort of just don't suspect anything. You know that they are working on a serial killer investigation. There have been a number of acid attacks that are sort of taking place all over London, and they are investigating who might be responsible. And then there's another layer where the two of them are embroiled in a very passionate, very illicit love affair, because he is married with a child, and she's sort of becoming increasingly obsessed by him and by the idea of them truly being meant to be together. And so you slowly start to understand that this woman, there's more to her than you initially think. And really what's going on is that she is this really, really damaged woman who had a insanely difficult childhood and hasn't been able to shake that trauma and those scars, those emotional, psychological scars, and is, again, spoiler alert, sort of in a vigilante-esque kind of fashion, one by one, getting rid of men in London she believes cause harm to women. Yeah.
Is it difficult getting yourself into that kind of dark material? I mean, what do you do in order to to mentally prepare yourself to have to delve into that kind of darkness as an actress?
It's a very good question. I don't really have a step-by-step fail-proof process for that. I don't really do. I probably should, but I know a lot of people use like a stepping in and a stepping out skill. I think for me, it's just a little bit more ephemeral than that. I don't know. It's I think just in preparing the role and getting to know who she is, there's a part of me that finds it maybe a little too easy to understand and empathize with these kinds of characters. And from there, it just is a kind of like a heart connection that I don't really struggle to maintain throughout the shoot. But I will say I don't hold on to it. I go, I went home from set on that shoot and let it all go. I'm not the kind of person that holds on to that to stay in character for the duration of the shoot. I don't think I could. I don't think I'd cope too well with that. I know Richard works much more in that way, and for him the shoot was fairly unbearable for that reason. But yeah, I had lots of friends in London, and I was having a whale of a time in my free hours. But then when I went to work, which actually helps me when I'm at work, then truly commit to being in a dark place.
I'm glad to know you didn't take it with you. You seem to have adjusted pretty well. One more interesting aspect about this that I wonder if it affected your performance is that, like I said, there's a twist at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's told in this kind of reverse chronology. So I wonder, as an actor, does that kind of storytelling device affect the way that you play certain scenes? Because I mean, we're all working towards an arc,
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going, in reverse, and you have to, leave certain things a mystery, does that kind of affect the way that you play certain scenes?
It definitely does, and particularly for me, I found it really challenging because, of course, I was also dealing with telling lies constantly, and there were a few scenes where there's even like a private Elaine moment happening where I'm not having to lie to Gabriel or lie to my coworkers. There's just a private moment where I'm digesting something or I'm thinking something, and even then I had to sort of conceal for the sake of the audience if we were at a certain point in the narrative, because you don't want to give too much away. So for me, there's always a little bit of a tricky balance between staying true to what the character would genuinely be feeling and thinking, and also not wanting to ruin it for the audience. So yeah, we were constantly trying to find a balance between that. And then, of course, just like the constant problem-solving element of like, well, hang on, actually, what's just happened? Yeah, what's happened chronologically, and then also what's happened in the way it'll be in the edit, and just making sure we were making sense the whole time. Yeah.
Well, Jodie Balfour, thank you so much, and congratulations on all your work this year. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Exactly. Pleasure talking to you too.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too.